Namaskar and welcome back to Media Scan, your weekend dose of headlines, controversies and perspectives. A happening week with the first tribal woman rising to the highest office and lots of hangama in and outside Parliament. So, let's check out what made news. Draupadi Murmu, the first tribal woman, took oath as President of India early this week. Addressing parliamentarians soon after, on that historic occasion, President Murmu said her election was the achievement of every poor and downtrodden of the country. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was the first to visit her at her new address, the Rashtrapati Bhavan. Supreme Court has upheld the validity of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act 2002, saying that the provisions of summons, arrest, search and seizure etc. are legal and not arbitrary. The apex court ruling came this week after 250 odd petitioners complained that the Enforcement Directorate's actions under PMLA were violative of fundamental rights. Wait for a special discussion on this in just a few moments. The unsavory comment of Congress MP Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary on the newly elected President of India has created a furor. BJP leaders demanded an apology from Congress Chief Sonia Gandhi in Parliament. This was followed by an argument between the two parties within Lok Sabha and a legal complaint as well. The controversy continues to flash in the headlines. Partha Chatterjee, former minister and till recently the right-hand man of Mamata Banerjee, has been sacked from the government. The move came even as mountains of cash, gold and other valuables continue to tumble out from the residence of his close aide Arpita Mukherjee. ED has claimed that the money is related to a teacher's recruitment scam, but media reports claim there could be more cases of corruption as well. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has said that there are no losers in the world of sports. There are only winners and future winners. He said there was no better time for sports in this country than the present, as our players were excelling in the Olympics, Paralympics and other world tournaments despite the challenge of COVID. PM Modi was addressing participants and guests at the opening of the 44th Chess Olympiad in Chennai. 250 odd petitions were filed in the Supreme Court against various investigations of the Enforcement Directorate within the purview of the PMLA. This week, the apex court not only upheld the provisions of the PMLA, but has very clearly ruled that the various provisions relating to bail or summons or confiscation of property etc. are not only totally legal, but there is no question of arbitrary action in these matters. So, will political parties now take the cue and stop questioning investigations and start cooperating at their level, as also cut down on street protests and other debates over these investigations? To understand various issues and questions arising out of the Supreme Court ruling and what it means for the premier investigating agency, I have here with me my guest on Media Scan this evening, none other than well-known investigator and former director of the Enforcement Directorate, Mr. Karnail Singh. Good evening and very happy to have you on Media Scan, sir. Welcome, and we hope to have a fruitful discussion with you this evening.
Thank you very much.
And my first question to you is a very obvious one, sir. Mr. Karnail Singh, you must have gone into detail of the Supreme Court ruling on the provisions which were challenged by various petitioners. What, in your perspective, sir, is the significance of this order and how far can it go to help in the investigation being held and being investigated by your various former colleagues, as also the reputation, the importance of the premier agency, the ED?
See, we have all been waiting about the orders of the Supreme Court because almost all the provisions of Prevention of Money Laundering Act were challenged in the Supreme Court, starting from what is proceeds of crime, what is money laundering, whether projection is mandatory under Section 3 or not, even the attachment Section 5, certain aspects of Section 8 where the adjudicating authority decides, the search under Section 17, search of a person under Section 18, the arrest of a person under Section 19, then the twin conditions of bail under Section 45, the presumption under Section 24, the interrogation or questioning under Section 50, and Section 63 if somebody is not telling the truth. If you can see all the provisions almost which are required by the investigating officer were challenged in the Supreme Court. And therefore the judgment has cleared to everybody what is the right approach. Now they know what is the law because everything was under challenge. Now if you see the Enforcement Directorate, you asked me the importance of the Enforcement Directorate. Enforcement Directorate enforces 3 laws. One is the exchange laws, which we call Foreign Exchange Management Act 1999. Second is the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, which is under consideration now, the 2002, which came into force in 2005. And there is a third new legislation, which is Fugitive Economic Offenders Act 2018. The Enforcement Directorate is the only agency which deals with these 3 laws. And if we talk of the Prevention of Money Laundering Act, it doesn't impact only the person who has been cheated, person who has been extorted, but it impacts the society at large. And that is the importance of PMLA.
Sir, before coming to the impact that you are hinting at on the society and the country, as a lay person, pardon me, but from what I gather from your reply to us just now, your perspective says, had the ruling or the judgment been not what it was, it almost seems as if all investigations would have come to a halt or perhaps totally emasculated. Am I right, sir?
Yeah, absolutely right. Because you're not aware what tomorrow Supreme Court will say is right or what Supreme Court will say wrong. But now everything is amply clear. What are the powers available? What are the powers not available? So it's a good thing that investigating officer knows its limitations.
So now that, as you said, things have become amply clear, and I'm sure the clouds have cleared, there is perfect clarity about how to go ahead with the investigations in the minds of your former colleagues. How much of a morale booster can this order be, number one, sir? And number two, do you think it is going to strengthen the image, the reputation of the agency? How will it impact its future and the operations?
The agency has the power, various powers, which has been now given to it. The power has been found to be within the framework of Constitution. And the officers would be able to work without any fear that what if tomorrow my powers are found to be not constitutional. Take for example of the simple thing, what is the proceeds of crime? Even that was under challenge.
Yes.
That the equivalent value of the property cannot be attached. Now the question is, suppose there is a criminal who extorts the money of suppose 5 crores and he spends all the money. How to recover that money from him? And that is the reason why the equivalent value concept was brought into the act. That equivalent value of the property which he has spent or which is not recoverable can be recovered from him from his other property. So it will help. Take example of Section 24, which is called reverse burden of proof. See, Enforcement Directorate is to prove that somebody has in his possession or has got the proceeds of crime, thereafter whatever property has been attached, the court presumes that this property is from the proceeds of crime unless it is proved otherwise. So burden of proof has shifted to the accused.
On that point, sir, I read a couple of editorials in various national dailies, and there is a lot of writing in op-eds and commentary going on, saying that this idea of presuming someone guilty till proven otherwise is not quite commensurate with our fundamental rights. How do you look at that debate?
See, it is not, we have to understand what is the reverse burden. The first is Enforcement Directorate as an investigating agency has to prove this person has in his possession proceeds of crime. That burden has not been shifted. So he's already found to be involved in the schedule offences of which he has obtained the money, and that proceeds of crime he might have put anywhere. Now, if the Enforcement Directorate attaches those properties, of course, Enforcement Directorate has chain of the evidences to prove that this property has arisen from this. But the court presumes that if this person has obtained through dubious means, through illegal means, some property, then the property attached from him, he has to prove that it has not come from the proceeds of crime. So it is not that the person is presumed to be guilty. It is a burden of proof shifts to him once the ED completes his responsibility of proving that that person has the proceeds of crime in his possession.
So for the benefit of our viewers, Mr. Singh, what you are saying is that it doesn't exactly mean that every citizen is presumed guilty in the eyes of the ED or under this law. It is, in fact, there is an entire background to it when we give the person the opportunity to prove himself or herself innocent. Is that what you are saying?
Absolutely. See, first there has to be schedule offense. Let me explain to you what is a schedule offense.
Yes, please.
The Prevention of Money Laundering Act has 3 schedules, which are called Schedule A, B and C. There 30 acts comprising of 160 sections of those acts are included. If anybody does offense under those sections, certainly some case would be registered by some other agency. Now this case we call as a schedule offense or predicate offense. And the agency which is investigating that case is called predicate agency. For example, suppose there is a bank fraud case. So the bank fraud case would be investigated by the CBI under section 420 Indian Penal Code. Now that's a predicate of an agency, and this section 420 has been mentioned as a schedule offense under PMLA. Now, since it is a schedule offense under PMLA, the Enforcement Directorate can start investigating where this money has gone.
Right.
So that is a part of the Enforcement Directorate. So then it attaches the property. Suppose somebody has cheated a bank of 3,000 crore. And the CBI finds that yes, there is an offense of 3,000 crore being cheating done by this particular person. Then ED comes into play and finds the where this 3,000 crore has gone, and it attaches the property. So there is a whole background, as you said. The background that is a criminal offense, background that this person has cheated, background that this person has obtained that cheated money with him. So therefore, it is not that any person can be booked and said, okay, you prove your property.
Absolutely.
To be the genuine property.
So therefore, sir, a lot of the debates and discussion, absolutely, sir, and therefore a lot of debate and discussion and back and forth which goes on in the media, it actually needs to be seen in its entirety with more deep provisions. But I shall come back to you on that. So that was Karnail Singh ji explaining to us why the recent ruling of the Supreme Court is so significant for an investigator who is investigating a case under the PMLA. I am now joined by the second guest on media show this evening. Allow me to introduce Rohan Dua, co-founder and editor of the well-known digital platform, The New Indian. Welcome back to Media Scan, Rohan Dua, and thank you for joining in the middle.
Thank you so much, Mitaji, for this wonderful debate.
Rohan Dua, Mr. Karnail Singh, former Director ED, was just explaining to us why these provisions being upheld by the Supreme Court is such a significant order. But you are a field reporter, so please tell us, uh, all those attacks on the ED's investigations, on the agency's reputation, its image, even street protests, do you think people will take a cue from the SC order now and such attacks will stop so that the investigations can continue impartially and in a fearless manner?
Absolutely, Smita. First of all, I must congratulate you for holding this debate and its immediate engagement on the subject which is going on in terms of the volume of the crimes which have been committed by some of the prominent leaders of this country, and also the prominent and key investigators who put their heart, mind and soul into probing the enormity of these cases. Let me tell you that I have worked on the cases where Mr. Singh was involved in, and he brings with himself the credibility, integrity in investigations right from the days when he was with the Delhi police and then with the enforcement directorate. Whether you look at his Butler House encounter, all the big probes which he handled, Augusta Westland, or the BlackBerry cases involving some of the prominent CBI officers as well. But let me tell you today that the Supreme Court's ruling definitely has an immediate significance for multiple counts. One, let me tell you that for many reasons held by the politicians not attending to the summons of or by the enforcement directorate is that they do not take ED seriously. They think that it is only investigating the part of the money laundering crime and they cannot arrest them beyond that money laundering crime. But because the Supreme Court now today has said that ECIR cannot be equated with the FIR, which means largely that the fact that ECIR document cannot even be given to the accused, ED does not have to share the sensitivity of the crime, because after all, FIR crime FIR largely deals with murder, theft, prevention of corruption and so on, all for the CBI. But it is the ED which actually goes beyond the call of duty, beyond the mandate of the regular policing authorities or the investigating authorities to find the trail of that money from where it is coming, which is the proceeds of crime.
In fact, if I am not wrong, the Supreme Court has observed that providing the ECIR is not mandatory for the agency. It can carry on with its investigation.
Absolutely. So the very ground which either Mr. Chidambaram or his son were taking in their cases, or that of even the National Herald case, that ground today does not stand, because they kept on saying that the ED has not submitted the copy of the FIR or the so-called the ECIR before the accused. So that matter now settles for once and all. After all, let me tell you that if the officer today is investigating any sensitive matter like this, where there are proceeds of crime, where there value or money exchange between two different entities, whether it is an institution or a company or an individual, the disclosure of reasons can actually hamper the investigation, because you can hide the documents, you can change your signatures, you can tell the banks not to disclose under certain circumstances, which is not possible in the case of ED anymore, because this ruling will now forbid the accused to seek the sensitive information from the investigator. So that means
Point taken, Rohan. I want to bring in Karnal Singh ji. I want to bring in Karnal Singh ji back into the discussion again. So allow me to go back to Mr. Karnal Singh. Mr. Singh, you had been explaining to us about the depth of this order, but honestly, when we investigate money laundering cases or such related cases, it is not just about ill-gotten wealth, because we know, and you know it better than anybody else, sir, that a lot of these proceeds, a lot of the wealth which is being investigated actually goes into funding the enemies of the nation. It is not just an economic offense. There may be very serious security implications, and in fact global connections are always unearthed, which go into funding powers and elements which are the enemies of the country. What would you say, sir?
Certainly the money laundering can be used for terror financing, and it has been used in various parts of the world, including the terrorists in the country. The money laundering not only helps in the terror financing, it actually does impact the society at large. And let me give you an example. Suppose there are two businessmen doing business. One businessman is doing business with the white money, and one businessman is doing business with the ill-gotten money. Now, the person who is doing business with the ill-gotten money, his only sole purpose is that how to conceal the origin of this money. He is ready to do business at a loss. He is ready to do business at a par. But the person who has a white money, he is investing in business. His sole purpose is to earn certain profit. Now, if these two people start selling their product in the market, certainly who is going to win in the market? The person with the ill-gotten money, person with the money laundering. And in the whole process, the common citizen of the country, they get affected. So we have to understand money laundering does not impact only the people who are involved there in the money laundering process or only the people who have been cheated. But it impacts the other people who are law-abiding citizens, who wants to do good business in the country. They become failure in their businesses. So it impacts the whole society. It impacts the economy.
Wonderful. Thank you for... Yes, sir. Please carry on.
I'll give you another example.
Yes.
For example, the trade-based money laundering or hawala. What happens in this case? There is a transactions of foreign exchange which are not in the knowledge of the RBI, and therefore it impacts the understanding of the RBI about how the foreign exchanges transactions are taking place, and that understanding can be wrong because a large number of money which is going through hawala is not in the knowledge of the RBI. So it impacts our foreign policy, foreign exchange policy also.
Thank you for explaining that so well to us, sir. Certainly, we are not completely aware of these details, these intricacies, and so it shows how deep the rot can be if agencies do not have the freedom to operate in a fearless manner. I would like to have a word from Rohan Dua on this. Rohan, you just heard Mr. Singh explain to us that it is not just about making money through, ill-gotten means. It is also about that money reaching to enemies of the nation who are into terror and other drug trafficking and such issues. But coming back to my first question to you, which you did not completely answer, do you really see in the coming days that attacks on the ED or other agencies which are ready to expose the enemies of the nation are going to stop after this order, or is it going to be just allegations and more petitions and more counter petitions as we see?
So, Smita, my point is that whatever crimes you look in the last 10 years alone, whether it is investigations into the IPL scandals, investigations into the terror crimes, the terror funding, either by the NIA, CBI, or even the Enforcement Directorate, many of the crimes which took place during Mr. Singh's tenure, they were also largely dealing with terror funding as well. I myself reported on several crimes involving terror funding in Kashmir, where there were stone pelters involved, where there was JKLF involved, where there were many militants involved as well, and Mr. Singh was helming those investigations as well. And for his experience as an IPS officer, when he came to that investigating agency as ED, he brought the concept of investigating right by arresting those people, which earlier was not happening for many years, and ED was not actually a prominent agency. So your question that whether people will challenge through petitions, that will of course continue. But ED has today set itself a new benchmark in the 6, 7, 8 years alone, where a new precedence has been given, a new due has been given to this investigating agency, that it is at par with the CBI, or it is even beyond the CBI today, to enter the realm of financial irregularities by either the terror masterminds. For instance, even in Pulwama, instance in JKLF stone pelting cases of 2016, or for that matter, if you look beyond the bank frauds like that of Nirav Modi, Rotomac, and so on. So,
well said, Rohan Dua. So allow me to give the last word to Mr. Singh, because I am completely running out of time on the show. Point taken. Karnal Singh ji, on that complimentary note, I just would like to, a quick comment, sir. Now that we are past this order of the Supreme Court, you as someone who headed the premier agency, the Enforcement Directorate, what more do you want to see in the sense that the agency can be more strengthened and work more fearlessly in exposing the enemies of the nation, whether inside or outside?
See, you are talking of the agency. I have total faith in the agency that they will be able to perform par excellence. Their performance would increase day by day. And let's see, you are seeing a daily enforcement directorate now in the news, and I hope they will go on the right path, take action against the people who are harming the nation, who are harming the society, so that our society works in a right direction and our nation can develop better.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for putting it so profoundly. And on that note, I must express my gratefulness for that you found the time to join Media Scan this evening and were so gracious to explain all those provisions and their significance in the investigating procedure to all of us. Thank you once again, Mr. Karnail Singh.
Thank you.
Also, thanks to Rohan Dua for joining the debate this evening and sharing his experiences with us in the light of the recent order. Thanks again, Rohan Dua.
Thank you.
With that fruitful and very informative conversation, I am afraid the moot question still remains whether a message will go out after the Supreme Court order and allegations on investigating agencies will stop, or will we see more of the same? On that note, it's a wrap up on Media Scan for this evening, but do keep watching DD India as we shall continue to scan the media for you. Namaskar.